Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues from across the globe into focus. I'm Mok-yeon. As the 119th U.S. Congress gets underway, a notable shift in political representation is emerging with the rise of Korean-American politicians gaining increasing influence. Now, this growing presence has sparked anticipation about the role these leaders will play in shaping U.S.-Korea relations and the Korean-American community. However, there are rising concerns over the Trump administration's hardline immigration policies, with around 150,000 Korean immigrants reportedly facing deportation. Now, due to this, questions have arisen about the impact of these policies on both the Korean-American community and even the broader U.S. economy. So from the future of the U.S.-South Korea alliance to the economic ramifications of the new U.S. administration stance, many are now weighing in on how these developments will unfold. To delve into these issues today, we invite one of the first Korean-American women elected to the U.S. Congress, Representative Marilyn Strickland, Congresswoman for Washington's 10th District. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here.
So, Congresswoman, the 119th U.S. Congress started last month, and there are not only veteran lawmakers like yourself, but also 4 other Korean-American politicians, including Senator Andy Kim. What do you think has driven the rise of Korean-American politicians in the U.S.?
I would say a few things have driven the rise of Korean-American politicians in the United States. You're starting to see us run for office at all levels. And so we are on city councils. We have served as mayors, we are in state legislatures, we are on court commissions, and we're in Congress now. And so I believe we're creating a pipeline of talent, but also the fact that, when you see yourself reflected in elected office, it makes you say, I can do this. And there's been a very intentional effort to try and recruit high quality, talented Korean-American candidates, and we're doing well. And so I think the combination of those things really has increased our presence. My friend Andy Kim is now the first Korean-American in the United States Senate. I was one of 3 Korean-American women elected in my cycle in 2020. And so I just think you're seeing more of a presence, and I believe it's only going to increase over time.
Well, it's definitely I'm very proud to hear as a Korean myself. Now, so as a Korean-American politicians are gaining influence, there are increasing expectations for them to play a positive role in both the South Korean American community and also U.S.-Korea relations, of course. But due to, President Trump's stronger immigration policies, like I said in the intro, around 150,000 Koreans are facing deportation. What is your perspective on this issue? And are there any measures being considered as of this moment?
So if you look at some of the actions taken by Donald Trump through executive order, he talked about the deportation of people who are undocumented. And I think one of the conversations that often happens in the United States, especially when we talk about people who are not documented, is that people tend to think they only come from the southern border in Mexico and South America, when in fact they come from around the world. One thing has happened that I think is very important, and that's the idea of birthright citizenship. If you are born in the United States, you have the right to be a citizen. And there have been 2 judges now in the United States, one in Washington state and one, I believe, in Maryland recently, who basically said that is illegal. So I think that's good news. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is I think about immigrant populations that come from around the world who are in the United States. If we deported people for being undocumented, all of them, the U.S. economy would collapse because immigrants are doing so much important work in just about every single sector. So I wish that we could come up with a policy that creates a path to citizenship for people, and then also, look at what we can do from a very thoughtful, comprehensive immigration reform perspective, where we're looking at specific industries where we know we need talent, but also letting people who are working hard, who are paying taxes and doing right, to find a quick path to citizenship. But it's a complicated conversation. But as a Korean American, as someone who was born in Seoul myself, I understand the importance of this issue. So as a Korean American, as someone who values, immigrant talent, I definitely want to make sure that we're able to stop Trump from doing the wrong thing, but finding a way to do the right thing as well.
Well, that will definitely bring a sense of hope to many of our immigrants out there. Now, as a Congresswoman yourself, what kind of positive roles do you expect Korean American politicians to play in areas like, the Korean American community, the U.S.-Korea alliance, and U.S.-Korea relations? And also, are there any issues that you are particularly focused in?
I would say a few things. So obviously, there is a significant Korean American population here in the United States, whether you're in New York, LA, Washington State, Georgia, we're everywhere. And so really looking at the needs of the Korean American community, which honestly aren't that different from, I would say, the community at large, right? We want access to affordable housing. We want good jobs. We want to be able to get access to capital to start businesses. We care very deeply culturally for our elders, and we want to make sure they get access to good caregiving and healthcare. You know how much education is important to us as people. And so all those things, good schools, good jobs, safe communities, safe homes, those are our priorities here at home. But also understanding that we're part of the diaspora of people who come from Korea, and we want to make sure that the ties between the United States and the Republic of Korea stay very, very strong. We have nearly 30,000 troops stationed in South Korea, and that alliance that we have between the U.S. and Korea will remain ironclad regardless of who's president. We have to make sure that we're cultivating those relationships, promoting student exchanges, promoting very good, thoughtful, mutually beneficial trade agreements, student exchange, all those things that are very important to strengthening those ties.
Right. Now, Congresswoman, I just also want to touch upon the situation here in South Korea. As we all know, recently our country has experienced political turmoil regarding President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. I wonder, how does the U.S. political circle view this political situation in the country?
Well, remember, it happened very quickly, right? Over a period of 48 hours. So he declared martial law. The legislative branch came in and basically shut that down, and now he's been impeached. And so in many ways, this is how democracy is supposed to work. It's why you have separate co-equal branches of government to serve as checks and balances. So in many ways, what happened is a prime example of how democracy is meant to work and supposed to work. So we think about what's happening around the world right now, in Asia, in Europe, around the world, and we want to make sure that we are staying strong with our partners and allies who value and uplift democracy. Ukraine, right? All the different places in the world, Korea, Japan, all the places that value democracy, free and fair elections, and rights for all people. So what happened with President Yoon was an example of democracy in action, to be honest with you. And as far as, how Americans view it, it was a situation that is unfortunate, but in many ways, the system of democracy and checks and balances worked exactly as intended.
So despite the situation itself and how it brought impacts, it was clearly a sign of democracy in the country. Now, but some still worry, given the current instability in the country, many fear it would weaken U.S.-South Korea alliance or even trilateral cooperation between U.S., South Korea, and Japan. What's your thoughts on this?
I mean, people have very different opinions, both here in the United States and in Korea, about the trilateral agreement. If we're going to have a free and open Indo-Pacific and deal with the looming threat of the Chinese Communist Party, the trilateral agreement is incredibly strong, incredibly powerful, and necessary in many ways. Now, regardless of who holds the office of president in the Republic of Korea, the United States will always have a strong relationship. But I will say this, I think about the presidents who serve South Korea, and it's 1 5-year term. And that lends itself to instability if you think about it, because in the United States, we have term limits, but you can serve 2 4-year terms if you're able to get reelected. And so I think in some ways, having one term of only 5 years may somehow contribute to instability. We want all of our democratic allies to have stable economies, to have stable leadership, to have checks and balances. And so, as you all approach who your next president will be, we will be watching very carefully. And I still want to reiterate that our relationship with the Republic of Korea will always be strong because we want a free and open Indo-Pacific.
Right. And before we let you go, we also want to touch upon economic side. With a second term for President Trump, the America First policies are likely to continue, and it seems to be continuing. Do you think measures like further tariffs on allied countries or increases in defense cost sharing is likely? And what's the stance of the U.S. Congress regarding this?
Well, I will say that the America First policy, when you think about it, you always want to put your own country first. You want to take care of the people who live in your borders. You want to take care of the workers who are here. But when you think about the effect, for example, on tariffs, remember recently Trump had talked about imposing tariffs on our allies, Canada and Mexico. There was public outcry immediately from farmers, from the business community. And what they know is that when we impose tariffs that are unreasonable, they will be retaliatory. So you get into a trade war. And the only thing a trade war does is raise prices for consumers, raise prices for businesses, and really puts instability in the supply chain. So as you saw, President Trump rescinded those tariffs right away. And so as we talk about the relationship between, United States and Korea, we have the trade agreement that exists. As far as, having the conversation about paying more for defense, I think that's a conversation that really comes up in the news, but we've not sat down and talked about it. And so we want to make sure that it's being done fairly. We're doing it conscientiously, but understanding that having military presence in Korea is important for a free, safe, and open Indo-Pacific. But as far as what Trump will do, it's always hard to tell because he's incredibly unpredictable.
Right. Thank you so much, Representative Strickland, for those thoughtful insights of yours. And it's clear that lawmakers are going to be focused on maintaining, strong allies and also navigate the complexities of international relations. So as we look ahead, it will be interesting to see how the Congress balances these priorities in the coming years. We really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your perspective on these important issues. Thank you so much again for your time tonight.
Great. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you again.